Hello and welcome to Caravanning with the Missus. Thanks for tuning in, joining, watching and subscribing. And I hope you're all well. And I hope you enjoyed the slight dusting of snow we had for the first time over the Midlands anyway. All very exciting. Anyway, that's got nothing to do with today's vlog and the reason that I'm here chatting to you today. So today's little vlogette is part of the VanOther Collective. We're a collection of like-minded travellers, I suppose, because there's caravanners, there's campervanners. Are there any tenters? Campers? Don't think so. But anyway, like-minded people that like to enjoy holidays around the country and the world in our little units. So if you want to check them out, links are below, and they're also doing vlogs on the same subject, so it's always good to see other people's opinions, so that will be great. And their logos will be appearing at some point several times in this vlog. Anyway, so this month's little topic is to do with tips for winter caravanning. Yeah! Because Sadie and I like caravanning in the winter. In fact, disclaimer, I actually love caravanning in the winter. It seems a bit strange, but I actually look forward to my winters because I love caravanning in them so much. It feels a little bit weird because I've never looked forward to winter before. I'm not a wintry sort of person, but I do look forward to them in the caravan. The main reason being because Sadie's got her twinkly lights. Actually, this is one of my tips as well for winter caravanning. It's always nice to have little twinkly lights. You can get them from wherever, B&M and all that. That use their own battery source, AAs or AAAs. We've got rechargeable ones anyway, so we keep recharging them every time. But anyway, so it's always good to use those because A, they're not using the caravan battery, which is good, especially if you're off grid. And B, they just give off a nice atmosphere in the caravan. So we love those. So twinkly lights, everybody, that's tip number one. Brilliant stuff. The other thing is, we love caravanning in the winter. We also like going off grid in the winter. You can do it quite easily with a caravan these days. Obviously better if you've got solar panel, although bear in mind that even in bright sunny days, because the sun's down at a funny angle, it struggles a bit to get to charge the batteries up sometimes. Well, it'll be all right just charging the battery up as long as you don't use it for that much else, we find. That's with a 150 watt panel. Which reminds me, before I move on, if you watched our last vlog, you'll probably notice that our caravan batteries died. I've tested it, it only powers the TV, 34 watt TV for 1.5 hours, so it's definitely dead, our lead acid one, so it's time to upgrade it. So if any of you lot know of a LifePo 4 battery that's perhaps in a sale somewhere, it needs to be low profile and it needs to have one of those heaters in it as well. So if you know of any of those, because we're waiting for the sales, but if you can get in touch. Anyway, that's beside the point. So, you might have to excuse me as usual, referring to the old notes. So yes, tip number one is twinkly light, very handy. Next tip is, seems fairly obvious I suppose, try and book hard standing pitches. Because obviously if you don't, then there's a good chance you might get stuck in the mud. Even if you've got a four-wheel drive, we've seen those getting stuck in the mud a few times. So try and book hard standing pitches where you can, especially during the winter months. Or if you can't, try and get a pitch in the grass that's next to some tarmac, so you haven't got far to drive. Also, you might want to consider using a motor mover a bit if it's not too muddy as well, instead of the car, because that might just have a bit more traction on the old caravan wheels. So yeah, in hard standing or near hard standing if you can. If you do have to go on grass, then obviously if you're on a hill, it's better when you hitch up, turn the caravan round so that it's pointing down the hill, so that when you tow away, you're towing down the hill and not up the hill. Because obviously it's much easier to tow down a hill for traction rather than trying to pull it up the hill. The number of people I've seen trying to do, we went to Bakewell on the grass a few years ago. No, it wasn't winter, but it was still wet. And anyway, people were trying to pull the caravans up the hill and obviously getting slippery. If it looks like it's going to be freezing, Make sure, always a good idea to have a blanket or something or towel you can wrap the water barrel in, and try and lift it off the floor as well if you can. What I tend to do, I've got a huge sheet, it's actually an undersheet, a bed undersheet that I always have in the car. So what I tend to do is wrap that round, especially the pipe going into the caravan where it connects with the caravan. That's a bit that gets frozen first, I find. So wrap that well, and then the rest of the water pipe and the whole barrel if you can, and then I tuck it underneath the barrel at the bottom so it's not touching the bottom, so it's not touching the floor, the ground. Yeah, always a good idea. You can get, I know you can buy thermal aqua roll covers, which is great stuff. I'm sure they're great, but in our climate I don't suppose they're particularly necessary unless it gets too cold. And also we found, temperature wise, if you've not been winter caravanning before, don't worry about the temperature. Well, if you've got a fairly modern caravan, temperature inside the caravan has no reflection whatsoever on the temperature outside. We found we've chosen to camp in -8 degrees centigrade temperatures out in the driveway a couple of years ago, and we found it's just lovely and toasty inside the caravan. So obviously modern heating, Truma and Aldi and all that, you get it nice and toasty, which is great. Might use a bit of gas as well if you are off grid, so remember to bring extra gas canister. Also, best to use propane instead of butane during the winter, because butane apparently I don't think works below about 0 degrees, whereas propane will work very well in minus temperatures. So that's another handy tip, propane instead of a butane. Always a good idea to bring extra bedding, an extra quilt. Sadie and I, she sleeps at one end, I sleep down the other end. We both have double quilts, so what I do is if it just gets cold, I just fold my quilt over, and then it keeps me warm, reduces the chance of me having to use the heating on all night. But this weekend, actually, I'll tell you about that later. But yeah, so we will be going away and we'll have electric hookup, so we'll probably just keep the heating on low all night. The other thing we like to do, actually, we've got a sun canopy. So it's quite a well-made one. It's a Dometic one, so it's quite thick, you know, so we can use it in the winter as well. And what we do is we just use it as a shelter in the winter to keep the rain off, gives you somewhere to take your shoes off and keep your shoes. But it also, when you open the caravan door to go in and out, it stops the caravan from getting quite so cold as well. It's just a little bit of shelter there. So we use that in the winter. That's pretty good, actually. If you think it's going to rain, then we tend to use the sun canopy. And of course we use it in the summer as well to shelter us from the sun. Seems fairly obvious, but when you leave site, make sure all the water has been drained out the system, including water heaters, pipes and everything. Leave the taps sort of half open on that end cold, so that when you're travelling home, all the vibrations can knock the water out of the system as much as possible. Yes, I know it won't do completely, but yeah, always good to do that before you leave site so that the water can knock its way out of the system when you're travelling. Very important tip. Do consider taking a torch with you, because the number of times you go walking out and about, get back to the caravan, and even at 4 or 5 o'clock you need a torch at that point, because often they don't have lighting near the pitches. Sometimes they do, sometimes they're well lit up, sometimes they don't. So yes, lighting. Also, well, a lot of these tips I suppose seem obvious to a lot of people, but to me, Sadie and I, it never ceases to amuse us, the number of people that seem to get really expensive caravans, you know, 30, 40 grand and a plush, comfy caravan, all the rest of it, take it to site, first thing they do, jump out, put the awning up, and then sit in the awning for the rest of the holiday. When you've got this lovely plush, lovely insulated, warm caravan, posh caravan as well in most cases, just sitting next to you, they seem to rather sit in the awning. Obviously, in winter, I know you can heat them and all the rest of that, but the amount of expense, not only financially, but also as far as the planet's concerned, the amount of expense of heating or even if it's gas, isn't good, because you're going to have to really give it some welly to keep the awning nice and warm, because obviously that's just a tent at the end of the day with very little insulation, whereas your caravan's got brilliant insulation, generally, if they're fairly modern. Always a good idea to take something in case your tyre wheels get stuck when you're trying to pull the caravan out of the pitch. what I do is I've got a couple of sheets of, I've got quite a few sheets actually, of plywood in the garage. It's only fairly thin, I think it's about 6mm plywood. Spare sheets of those, so I'll just take a couple of those with us in case the front wheels of the car get stuck when I'm trying to pull it out. But anything fairly grippy would do. To be honest, even the steadies for the Caravan, you know, the ramps, you get the plastic ramps. I haven't actually tried it yet with the car, but I would imagine that would help if the car gets stuck in the mud. Oh, another tip as well, because at Glastonbury we did get stuck in the mud. I wasn't towing the Caravan, we just happened to be going through a field and went down a sort of ditch thing. What you can do is, if the front wheels are stuck, if they're starting to spin round and making a hole, a good thing to do is, assuming normally the front wheels are facing straight ahead, so the hole in the mud will be straight ahead, is if you turn the wheels either left or right where there isn't, where your tyres haven't yet made a mark, made a groove in the sand, in the grass. So do it left or right so that they're sort of facing some proper grass or something, and then just give it a little bit of power, and then because you've got the grass there instead of mud, it just might give it a little bit more traction just to get out of it. So that was a useful tip somebody told me last time we were a little bit stuck at Glastonbury, and that helped perfectly actually. That was really good. And obviously if you do get stuck, very, very small gradual amount of power on the gas to get you out of there. Otherwise, as soon as you start spinning, then you've had it. So yeah, very, very, very gradual with the gas, and the clutch indeed, very gradual with the... And the other very useful tip seems very obvious, but it's going to be cold out, so take some nice warm clothes as well, just for obviously travelling, getting out and about. But that's pretty obvious, isn't it? Warm hat, because obviously it's going to rain, probably going to rain, wellies, all that sort of stuff, all depending on what you like to get up to. So yes, there you go. So I hope you've enjoyed this little vlog on a few tips on winter caravanning. We're no experts, obviously, but we do like caravanning in the winter. So there's a couple of things that you might find useful there. And don't forget to check out all the other vlogs on the same subject in the group. That will be great. They're all listed below, and I'm sure their logos are coming up now-ish. Yes, so thanks very much for watching. We're off, in a couple of days' time, actually, to our favourite site, Cromarsh Gifford, next to Wallingford, near Oxford in Oxfordshire. So we're really looking forward for that. That's only going to be about 4 days. We're going to be on grid. It's only £18 a night, but we love that site because we love the village nearby, and there's nice walks up and down the river. So we're looking forward to that, and Sadie's twinkly lights. Yes, so we may or may not get a visit from her sister as well. So that'll be our next vlog coming up next weekend. So until then, enjoy yourselves and happy winter caravanning. Laters taters.